In episode 3, the voice on the other end of that phone is in fact the guy that was dressed up in white in Bangkok. He called up Peter because he wants to strike a deal with him, but the deal sucks. He wants Peter to open up the door and let his men in, and then Peter is going to tell his men exactly what Warren said, and then who Peter told that to, and then in return, they're going to kill Peter. What does Peter get out of all this? They don't go after Rose. This mystery man makes it clear that he knows exactly where Rose is, and he can end her life at any time. And even after Peter says she has nothing to do with this, the guy doesn't care, because that's his leverage. Peter, though, doesn't take the offer. He tells the guy to go pound sand. He calls Rose up. He tells her, you got to get out of there, which he called it a good time because that bald guy is after Rose. And then Peter tries to get out of there. You've got Peter trying to evade bullets while he talks to Rose on the phone, letting her know exactly what she should do to lose this guy's tail. Unfortunately, the guy catches up to her. He's got Rose cornered and surrounded, and even though Rose is yelling for help, he just covers her mouth. But Rose, who was told by Peter to grab a knife, did that, and she stabs the guy in the arm, and she's able to get away. Still, though, she's running down the street, and she knows that this guy's going to be after her because that wasn't a death blow. And that's when she gets pulled into a corridor by Catherine. Rose texts Peter to let him know that she's okay, but she's with Catherine. And what Catherine can't figure out is how exactly Rose was able to find Peter. She's had her best guys trying to find Peter with no luck. More than anything, though, she wants to talk to Peter, which Rose is hesitant to do because she doesn't know who she can trust, but ultimately she brings Catherine to a meeting with Peter. They don't even get into pleasantries. Catherine asks him who the bald guy was because she snapped a photo of him, and Peter says that's the person who shot Alice. Peter, though, finds her story fishy, and Catherine finds Peter's story fishy. Neither of them trust each other, and they both make that abundantly clear. Rose is the one who brings them back to the negotiating table, and Peter reminds Catherine that he saw the buyer in Bangkok. He's the only one who can identify this guy. And the fact is, Catherine needs him. He does let her know that that guy in white did call him that night, shortly after he shot Warren and killed him. But when Catherine asks, did Warren give you any information? Peter lies and says, no, he didn't. He gets the topic, though, back to the mystery man. He says, that guy knows that I can ID him. And he knows that Rose is close to me, so I have to find this guy before he finds us. Catherine gives in. She says, fine. I have the FBI right now running facial IDs of this bald guy. Find out who he is and then find who his buyer is, or I'm sending you back to the White House basement. When Peter and Rose get back to Peter's apartment, they're able to figure out that the guy that called Peter, the guy in white, was most likely the same guy that called Rose out in California. They head to bed that night, and Rose is planning on heading back to California the next day. Catherine offered her some safety. But in the middle of the night, she wakes up because she's having night terrors. It's the first time you really get a look at her PTSD, and Peter gets a look at her PTSD. In the morning, Peter does bring it up, and she explains how she's been dealing with night terrors ever since it happened. She does talk to a therapist, but it really hasn't helped all that much. He can relate because he still dreams about Alice dying, and he blames himself for what happened to her. A little while later, they get the dossier regarding the facial recognition for the bald guy and what the FBI was able to find. He's got a bunch of different aliases. Luckily, though, using Adverse, Rose is able to exclude all of those names and use old facial recognition to try to find his actual identity. And they get a hit. His real name is Solomon Vega, and he's dead. Well, at least according to the obituary, he's dead. He's survived by one sister named Celeste. But as they dig more, Adverse cuts off Rose's access. That's because Adverse's founder was able to realize that Rose was in on the code, she was reworking it, and he is pissed. He shut down her access completely. He calls her up, furious. And Rose quickly makes up a lie about why she was using it the way she was, and he demands, you need to get back to California right now. We need to discuss whether or not you have a job. Rose tells her boss, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I'll be there tomorrow. But then she goes right back to Peter. Because at least with the Solomon Vega thing, they have a lead, and that lead is the sister Celeste. They decide to pay Celeste a visit, and she's a quadriplegic. Rose tells Celeste that her father was in the Marines, Solomon served under him, her father recently died, and she's trying to go around and talk to Marines that knew her dad. This lie is able to get them in the door, but Celeste tells them, I'm sorry, but my brother's dead. As she continues to talk, she's working on her candle business. To which Peter asks, "Do you have a card?" Because he noticed that the cards are right next to the mail. So when he goes to grab a card, he also grabs a piece of mail. And the mail is Celeste's bank files. It'll give him an indication on whether or not Solomon is actually dead or not. They do see that his VA fund is going towards her, but then they see another deposit. It's from a place called KinCare Trust, so now they have another lead to go on about who this Solomon guy is and where he might be. As they refill for gas on the way back to New York City, Rose calls up Catherine. She gives her the good news that they have yet another lead. But when Catherine mentions the Secret Service sending Rose back to California, Rose asks her, "What if I stay? I know you and Peter think I'm better off leaving, but I've felt safer in the past 12 hours than I have in the past 9 months. She then tries to mend the fence between Peter and Catherine. She lets Catherine know that she's seeking help, and it has helped. But Peter is still holding on to the death of Alice, and it's pretty clear to Rose that so is Catherine. Maybe they should talk about it. Catherine, though, is a little against that. As she puts it, "I'm not a shrink." About an hour later, they do meet up with Catherine at a ferry location. Catherine was able to look into Solomon Vega, and what she found was very interesting. Pretty much his entire file has been wiped, which means somebody did that. Peter then tells Catherine, "You need to tell me what happened in Bangkok, because if I'm going to trust you, I need to know what happened." Catherine explains that she flew to Bangkok. She spoke to every witness. She looked at every piece of evidence. Night Action is airtight. She then tells him, "I know Alice's death shook you. I mean, it shook me. I was 2 oceans away. But the fact is, there is no conspiracy here. It's just a deal that went bad." Now, we can continue to ask why, or we can go after the guys that did this to Alice, but we can't do both. That gets Peter to open up about what Warren talked about with Operation Foxglove. After the whole Foxglove debrief, Catherine brings up the fact that Rose wants to stay under Peter's protection, and she fights for Rose. She says, "Look, that tech that she used helped find you, helped find Solomon. It may prove useful, but ultimately it's your call because you have to babysit her." Catherine gets a phone call. Peter and Rose talk about it, and when Catherine comes back, Peter says, "I got her. She'll stay with me." The phone call, though, was from Director Mosley and the CIA director, Director Gedney. The search for Solomon flagged images that were taken earlier in the day by a, quote, CIA asset, who was Noor. At the behest of her handler, she was searching for new information. She found out that her boss had a secret meeting on the books, so she planted an AirTag in his person, and she followed it. She snapped some photos of everybody going in and out of the location, and that included Solomon Vega. Of course, she didn't know this at the time. She just thought, okay, maybe this can get some information that could get my family out of Iran. She did notice that Solomon showed up with a briefcase, and when he left, he didn't have it. When her boss left, though, he had the briefcase, and she thought that was interesting. Her handler, though, did not. But the image of Solomon Vega was filed, and that popped up when they searched for Solomon Vega. Catherine tells both of them that the CIA asset is Noor. She's looking for asylum for her family. And they're going to speak with her tomorrow because they're taking over her case. Not too far away, though, there is a rich bureaucrat named Thomas. Thomas's father has some political pull, but at the moment, he's incarcerated for war crimes. Thomas asks an old school buddy named Elliot, who's got some pull with the UN, to talk to his boss and get his father out of there, but Elliot has no interest. You could just tell that Elliot thinks that Thomas's father is a scumbag, even though they're friends. This really frustrates Thomas, but he and his girlfriend go back up to their hotel, and later that night, Thomas gets a phone call from his cousin. His cousin tells him, "We took the whole thing. I know that wasn't the plan, but trust me, it's better this way. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And the thing that they took was Foxglove. Even though Warren was under the belief that Foxglove was shut down and it was old and all that, it wasn't. The chemical weapons were made in a laboratory. The laboratory was being transported. The transport was intercepted by Thomas's cousin, in which Thomas's cousin took the entire laboratory and killed 2 Marines in the process. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.